This is a big problem. I just recently bought a bunch of great backpacking gear, went on my first trip, had a fantastic time, and now I want to go again, which doesn't seem like a problem, but, well, it's the middle of the winter. You know what though? Since I was already dressed, I figured I may as well go anyways. Ohio, and in particular the Zaleski South Loop, or Moonville Rail Trail. As I parked in the lot of an old schoolhouse, I began to think about my plan for the day. For the most part, I was going to take it pretty easy. The loop is just 11 miles long, meaning that in case I were to get too cold, lost, or anything else, at least I wouldn't be too far from my car. The only downside is that it's supposedly haunted, so I'll have to keep an eye out for that. But for now, it's time to hike. I quickly learned two lessons about winter backpacking. Firstly, it's definitely slower. I mean, even the smallest hills became a slip and slide. And secondly, regardless of the fact that it was 10 degrees outside, it was hot. And I know people say that you should be bold, start cold when it comes to hiking, but I just always thought that was a trap. So, both happy with my decision to pick a shorter trail due to the snow, and relieved that I wasn't going to freeze to death during the day, I continued on. After all, those were my two main concerns during this trip. And with those gone, all that was left is navigation and the nighttime. Nighttime though is a problem for later me. Right now, all I wanted to focus on was finding my way. Since everything was covered in snow, I figured it might be real tough to stay on the trail. But thankfully the sides of the trees were perfectly clear and they had these constant orange markers, as well as footprints on the ground from another hiker. It did feel a bit creepy at times, following some random person's every move out in the middle of the woods without them knowing that I was slowly closing the distance, sort of like I was hunting them down. But I mean, for me, things were pretty great. And for all I know, someone could be following my steps just the same, which is cool and all. I just hope that they don't realize that I may or may not have fallen through the ice while crossing a stream. Did I end up soaking my entire left leg? Yeah. Will this be a problem later though? I mean, yeah, probably. And it's around this point here, a couple of miles in, where someone online said that they recently saw a bear. Now, I didn't even know that they had bears during the winter, let alone Ohio, but they do. These little stinkers are everywhere. I didn't see any though. In fact, the only living creature I saw the entire time was a small bird. Nothing else. Hard to blame anyone though when it's 10 outside. In fact, why was I out here? I was starting to wonder if this was a stupid idea. At least until I took a moment to soak in my surroundings. I mean, how often do you find yourself in such quietness? Or such stillness? It was really just me. Me and, well, my wet foot. And speaking of feet, the hiker friend that I've been stalking up until this point decided to take a different route, leaving me to navigate on my own. Which was pretty bad, yeah. Okay, well, not actually that bad. The orange markers were still around, the snow wasn't deep enough to hide the trail completely, and if all else failed, I still had my phone with me, which had my map downloaded, so if that was good to go, I was good to go. The coolest part about no more people being in front of me was that I got to see all of the animals that were also out on a hike. It was fun seeing tons of little footprints going along the trail, maybe just passing over it, some appearing to be lost, walking in circles, and so on. The footprints I saw were mostly coyotes, but there were also some deer, birds, skinwalkers, and occasional bunnies. Now, although they didn't change the fact that I was alone, it did change the feeling that I was alone. Anyways, I kept trekking away, and after some impressive tree hopping and slight incline hill climbing, I made it to my home for the night. A designated campsite with an outhouse and drinking water, which is super nice for people who come in the summer when it's not frozen. That's okay though, because this was still the perfect spot. Plus, of course I knew the water would be frozen, so I had my own water bottles, which were... Anyways, before it got too dark, I decided to start setting up my tent. A nearby rock helped me get the stakes into the cold hard ground. Thank you, rock, I don't know what I would have done without you. And then I got to business, setting up my hopefully warm and cozy sleeping arrangements. Once I wrapped that up, I was ready for dinner. I wrestled open my bear box to reveal the goods. First up on the menu, a red bell pepper. Then we've got some M&M cookies, my personal favorite. And lastly, for the main course, some homemade sushi. And by homemade, I mean bought from the Kroger down the street. Also, yes, my hands are shaking. Perhaps you forgot, but I'm standing still outside in 10 degrees Fahrenheit. I am no longer warm. After my meal, I sort of sat around for a bit with nothing much else better to do. And as the sun crept down, I was beginning to worry about whether or not I'd stay warm through the night. So I figured I may as well crawl into my tent to start testing it out. The laces on my boots were frozen solid from getting wet. Not really sure how that happened. It's almost like someone fell through a creek. And then I laid under not one, but 2 sleeping bags, hoping they would combine their powers to create one really warm super bag. I don't know if I'd recommend this option, but it's the best I can do. And with that, my day was over, and my night had just begun. One bummer about the winter is that it's dark for a good 14 hours, meaning I'd be stuck here for, well, a while. I spent some of it reading, but for the most part, I just laid there trying to sleep. Also, my phone decided not to charge, claiming there was liquid in the lightning connector. I've no idea what that's about, why water keeps getting everywhere, so strange. But with my phone being my main navigation tool, this is really not what I wanted to see. Also, temperature-wise, still way below freezing, but to my delight, the super bag was working. Except there was one part of me that it couldn't reach, and I didn't expect to get so cold. That's my eyes. My eyelids and eyeballs were dying. I did find the solution though, and that was just to pull my scarf over my entire face. And although I don't have a video, I do have a reference photo I found that should sum it up. I had survived the night. All things considered, it wasn't too bad. I do have to say though, the morning right here was the worst part by far. Both of my boots were blocks of ice, and after banging on them for a while, I just barely squeezed my feet in, where they became completely stuck and cold as can be. Not to mention, the ground was so hard that I snapped one of my tent stakes in half. Anyways, I spent the next 20 minutes hiking at the speed of sound trying to get back to my car before I had to chop my legs off, and thankfully, moving around like that was enough to warm me back up to normal. This was a massive relief. Oh, and the other thing that was nice was that my phone persevered and actually did end up charging last night. 2 bullets dodged, and I was back to enjoying my time on the trail. Speaking of which, I made it to the railroad section. A perfectly flat, straight, and wide walkway next to a beautiful lake and river. What better way to spend my second day out here? I considered taking another dip in the creek, but a lot of the water around here is an orange color due to an old mine runoff, which wasn't ideal. Plus, I couldn't help but feel watched. So I continued on, and before long, saw the main attraction of this hike, the Moonville Tunnel. One of the few remaining foundations of the haunted ghost town of Moonville, the others being the schoolhouse I parked at and the cemetery. And this is apparently where most of the ghosts like to hang out. I'm guessing it was them that did the majority of the graffiti in here, which was actually really neat to look at. But other than the Garfield on the wall, I didn't see any other unsettling or paranormal activity. Might have been too cold, or quite possibly I just missed them, so I can neither confirm nor deny the hauntings. For now, all I could do was appreciate what was left and say my farewell to the Moonville Tunnel. I had other places to be anyways. Well, not really. My hike was coming to a close. I was enjoying the last few miles I had and thinking about my winter backpacking experience. In short, hiking in the snow was a lot of fun, but camping in it, not so much. And just like that, I was back at the car, happy to have gone. Now, there's just one thing left to do, the real reason I chose to come to this trail. To visit the world's largest pencil sharpener museum just down the street. It's also the only pencil sharpener museum, but for Mr. Robot, it was worth it. And that was my first time winter backpacking. Please feel free to subscribe and check out the other stuff I make. Also, I'd love to hear what winter stories you have or recommendations on where to go next. And if I don't hear from you, well, I'll see you in the next one.